9, 8.
You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey everybody, how you doing? You know, it's always funny to me when you find out that famous people did something prior to being famous. And I just found out that Tony Hawk, who most people know as probably one of the best skateboarders of all time, actually did something still involving skateboarding, but prior to becoming famous for skateboarding. He was hired as a stunt double for skateboarding. Specifically, in 1987, he was hired for the movie Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, and he was supposed to be the stunt double for David Spade. That in itself is funny. But they were talking about this. Spade has a podcast now called Fly on the Wall, and Hawk was his guest. And he talked about how not only was he hired to be Spade's stunt double, but he was also fired. And he went on to say, I went through a growth spurt from the time we tried out for the movie to the time we got there. And so the first week they were like, I think this guy's too tall. And I remember the director saying, you know, he's a pretty good skater, but he's a bad stunt double. So what happened was Stacy Peralta, the second unit director for skateboarding, kept telling me, stay low, stay low. And I go, I was trying. And then they just quietly sent me home. Basically, I got fired. Now, Hawk was replaced by another skater named Chris Miller, who then went on to be Spade's double. But there are definitely some continuity errors because Miller, unlike Hawk, skated the opposite of Spade. Their stance and stuff were complete opposites. So it looked horrible. But there was one scene that Hawk actually did do some work. So he is in the movie some. There's a scene where Spade actually thought, you know, Spade was a decent skateboarder at the time, and he thought he could do a stunt. And it was basically this 5-stair drop. And, you know, there was a bunch of people riding behind him. He's like, yeah, I got this one. Went in and screwed it up, crashed. And then all the people that were behind him, who were like 2 feet behind him and had no time to stop, all piled in on top of him. So they ended up using Hawk for that. And he ends up getting a credit in the movie as a skateboarder. So before Tony Hawk became the Tony Hawk, he was David Spade's stunt double. Funny how life works. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. I wonder if Tony Hawk is the most famous ex-professional skater for being a professional skater, or would Jason Lee be the most famous, even though he's not most famous for being an ex-skateboarder? Just kind of an interesting thought there. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is Thursday already. Wow. August 24th. This month, this year is flying by at an incredible rate. The new Ahsoka series is out. I have watched the first 2 episodes. We're going to talk about that. And I got a bunch of news to cover. So no collectibles today. I just didn't have a chance to put that together. So we will be doing everything else. So hello to Ed, to Triple B, to Clayton. Good to see you guys. Goofy Foot, yeah. And we got JD on the board. we've got an interesting lineup on the experience tonight because we're going to be doing a new show that we're not quite sure exactly what it's going to be yet. We've got What's in the Box, and Miss Jen has what she's calling the Hulk Smash Box that she's going to be going through. And then we have our regular program of Sketch Up with Mog and Mel and their guest, and they have a sketch of a female Punisher that they'll be giving away. So if you got a chance to tune in tonight, you may have a chance to win that. But we have a new show debuting about 5 o'clock on the network. And we don't know if it's going to be a half hour, it's going to be an hour, what exactly it's going to be. It's called Comic Book Beardies. And it's two gentlemen from the San Francisco Bay Area who used to run a comic shop and they were in the Castro district. So besides everything getting really expensive in San Francisco and then the pandemic, they ended up shutting their store down, but they're starting to get back into it. They've been kind of staying in the comic field, doing some direct sales stuff, but they're going to get back into it. They used to be on the Comic Shopping Network, so now they're coming over here. As they come back, they're coming over here, but we're not exactly sure how their show's going to work out. So we're doing what we're calling a soft debut tonight, which is we're just letting them on the air and to work out some kinks and stuff. But these guys, they're absolutely awesome. And they're going to have some great books. So if you get a chance, 5 o'clock, tune in and check out the Comic Book Beardies. So it'll be interesting. All right, let's see. Canadian Survivalist is here, or Canuck. I think we've decided to call you Canuck. So good to see you. I actually just spent the morning talking to a dear friend of mine from Canada, catching up with her. So we should get you like a Canadian flag for your picture and just lean into it, you know? All right. Let's get into the news. Got quite a bit of news. Academy Award winner Jamie Foxx is going to be playing God. Now, this is an upcoming comedy called Not Another Church Movie. And what's even funnier is who's playing the devil. Yes, Satan himself is going to be played by Mickey Rourke. So you've got Mickey Rourke as the devil and Jamie Foxx as God. Now this comes from writer-director Johnny Mack, but this pick was shot prior to the strikes, and it looks like it's going to have a fourth quarter release. Kevin Daniels is in it with Vivica A. Fox, Tisha Campbell, Jasmine Guy, Kyla Pratt, and Lamorne Morris. And the basic idea of this movie is that it follows the fabulous world of Taylor Ferry, which is Daniels, an ambitious young man given a holy mission from God himself to tell his family's story and inspire his community. His only concern, his family and his community. What he doesn't know is that the devil has plans of his own. So again, it's a comedy, so it could be good. And a lot of those, Tisha Campbell, Jasmine Guy, Vivica A. Fox, they're actors that we know from comedies, Lamorne Morris, and to see them come back and all this stuff is great. Comic Attorney says, I'm digging the look. You look like a cross between Dom DeLuise and Sam Kinison. Oh! Yeah, thank you. All right. Let's see. Kevin Smith is going to be doing some more comics with Dark Horse. He's going to be doing a second round of Quick Stops. This second black and white 4-issue anthology series will explore the origin story of the character Nancy Goldruff that was first mentioned in the 1990 movie Dogma as a creator of kids' films and TV series called Mubi. And of course, that led to the Mubi franchise. Smith says, in Quick Stops 1, we visited the small stories of this universe. So in Quick Stops 2, we did a 4-issue of a massive story that spans a few decades to tell the tale of Mubi. The golden calf, and where the salacious story takes us is gritty, graphic, and grotesquely grown up. I can't wait to introduce you to Nancy Goldriff, who warded merely a mention in Dogma, but gets a full-fledged secret origin story in Quick Stops 2. Smith is joined by Ahmed Rafat as the series artist and Andrew Thomas as the letterer. This will come out in November of this year. Kenneth, how you doing? And Nito says, honestly, movies on religion needs to be stopped. It's just not good to hurt feelings of people who believe in God. You know, I'm with you on that. I think people should, be able to believe what they want to believe. So, but there are ways you can do stories involving religion without attacking religion. So it's a comedy, the comedy is still out there. So we'll have to see how they do it. But all right, Rick and Morty fans, the 7th season is set to debut on October 15th with new episodes. Now, I'm assuming you guys all know Rick and Morty. If not, it follows a psychopathic genius scientist who drags his inherently timid grandson on insanely dangerous adventures across the universe. Yeah, it's originally it was a fanfic of Doc Brown and Marty from Back to the Future that just kind of grew onto its own. The new season will be available to stream in 2024. It's happening. Adult Swim president Michael Auline said in a statement, thanks to the talent of the entire show, we can all enjoy 10 new episodes that yet again raise the bar for comedy and animation. This season proves that the geniuses at work on Rick and Morty are just getting started. Now, this will be the first season without co-creator and star Justin Roiland, who is no longer in business with Warner Brothers Discovery and following allegations of domestic abuse. Said changes were dropped in January due to insufficient evidence. Said charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence, but they still parted ways. They have not recast the voice roles that Roiland played, which include both Rick and Morty. So, should be interesting to see how they recast them. Yeah, they are definitely changing the voice actors, but they haven't announced who yet. All right, moving over to the theater, Barbie is kicking Super Mario Brothers movie out of the top domestic spot for 2023. As of Wednesday, the film had made another 2.55 million, sending the total domestic take to 575.4 million. That's the best for a domestic film. Now, it's not the highest grossing year to date yet for the worldwide. That's still Super Mario Brothers at it's at 1.3 billion, while Super Mario's is at 1.35. So it still needs another 5 million or whatever to catch up to Super Mario's, but it's well on its way. As it's also getting a release in IMAX. Yeah, it's getting an IMAX run starting September 22nd. So not only is it not coming out of the theater, it's going to get into more theaters. It's already the best ever Warner Brothers movie for domestic, topping both The Dark Knight at 534.9 million and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the overall global, with 1.34 billion. So it's getting up there. All right, what else we got? According to the new information revealed as part of the Spider-Man No Way Home Art of the Movie art book, Marvel Studios had one mandate for the return of William Dafoe's Green Goblin. Interesting that both top movies are toy related. Yeah. Jay says, you ever think we'd live in a world where Barbie would be topping Batman? You could probably get that drawn at a convention if you ask the right artist. Just saying. JD says, not really following the allegations, more following the cast and crew of all the shows speaking about how horrible he is and how little work he was doing. Interesting. All right, so from the Spider-Man book, art book, Marvel basically had one mandate when it came to Green Goblin. According to Ryan Meinerding, who is the head of visual department, the Green Goblin is a character that we had a very iconic, heightened look from the first film. We were tasked with seeing how much of that we could keep while still making it feel like it existed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Since a lot of the MCU is about technology, I think Adi Granov was the first one to try to add the hood. Everybody was doing such gorgeous work. Visual department concept illustrator Phil Saunders did some hugely dynamic, amazing images of the Goblin on the glider about to throw pumpkins, and it was all aimed at essentially trying to ground the character a little bit more. Now, Saunders would add, there were thoughts about him getting access to a lot of MCU tech and being able to generate a new suit for himself, and there were different ideas that we could that could be, you know. So they had a bunch of stuff going on, but he said finally the decision was made. Let's take the suit from the Raimiverse and just MCU it up a bit. In other words, what would the effective design be with the costume molding technology we have today? A lot of the effort that I put in on the suit was in that direction, trying to make something that, at first glance, is clearly recognizable as Sam Raimi's suit, but just a little bit of an upgrade to today's standards and expectation for superhero costume designs and fabrication. And you've got to realize that it was almost 20 years between the two movies. So all the technology that we have now for making the costumes, and they make some pretty damn good costumes now. You know, what they had back then was still kind of new. So, all right, we got some more news from James Gunn because the guy can't stay off social media. And he has been saying a lot that Superman Legacy is the beginning of the DC universe, the new DC universe. Superman Legacy, Superman Legacy, Superman Legacy, except he just corrected it. He said the continuity actually starts with the Creature Commandos animated series, and then Superman Legacy. Now, during the original announcement, it seemed like it was going to be Creature Commandos, the Amanda Waller series, and then Superman Legacy. It was going to come out in that order. But now we found out that while Creature Commandos, all the scripts had been done and all the voice work had been recorded, they're just finishing the animation and editing and stuff. So that's still on track. And the script for Superman Legacy is done. There are no scripts yet for the Amanda Waller series. So there's a good chance that we'll get Superman Legacy before Amanda Waller. So, all right. And I think we have one more story. Yep. Star Trek fans, if you are a Star Trek fan, but you do not have Paramount Plus because you don't need a 9th streaming service, and, you know, I get it. I have plenty. I don't have Paramount Plus either. But if you want to see Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the first 2 episodes are going to be up on CBS, just standard TV. This is going to be Friday, September 8th, and they're going to air it as part of the annual Star Trek Day celebration held each year on September 8th to mark the anniversary of the original Star Trek's debut in 1966. The episodes Strange New Worlds and Children of the Comet, they originally aired back in May 2022 as part of the freshman season of the series on Paramount Plus. Well, the series, which stars Anson Mount as Christopher Pike, Ethan Peck as Spock, and Rebecca Romaine as Number One, is a prequel to the original Star Trek series and returned for season 2 in June, with a 3rd season renewal already secured. Also included in the Star Trek Day festivities will be a special program hosted by Jerry O'Connell that will stream online and feature an exclusive sneak peek at the upcoming 4th season of Star Trek Lower Decks, along with some new merchandise, stuff like that. So you can check all that out at StarTrek.com/day, and that will be where you can watch that and more information. So Star Trek fans, you can check that out. I have been seeing a lot of clips. I have not watched, well, that's not true. I watched the first episode of Strange New Worlds because it was available on YouTube to stream for free. It may still be, so you might want to look for that. I thought it was pretty good. But the two things I've been seeing a lot of clips on lately are scenes taken from the musical episode, and damn, can Ethan Peck sing. He is just really, really good, has a very unique voice, and he's already this grandson of Gregory Peck, so it's like, oh, and he can sing? Really? He needs all that? Really? And then the other thing I've been seeing are clips from the crossover between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, where a couple of the animated characters go through this portal and end up in the live action series. And Jack Quaid is one of the guys. He voices a character. Well, when he comes through, he's that character. And there's this hilarious moment where there's a saddle. And I don't know why he decides he wants to sit on the saddle, but he swings his leg up and around and goes, Riker. Doesn't say doing a Riker, anything like that. Just says, Riker, and sits like Riker did in all the old, or the Next Generation episodes. But what makes it even funnier is the director of that episode is Jonathan Frakes. And that line wasn't scripted. That was Jack Quaid on his own, just throwing that line in there and floored everybody. And then Frakes said that when he was at home with his wife, Jeannie Francis from General Hospital, they were watching the episode together, and that moment came up, and she literally fell on the floor laughing. So there's a lot of good Star Trek going on right now if you're a Star Trek fan. All right, so that's the news. I'm told we need to take breaks at 24, so it's 24. So we'll be right back with Ahsoka Tano.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find a link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP. What if Hans Gruber from Die Hard had to battle the Joker from Batman the Animated Series in a dance battle? Or who would win in a race between Baby from Baby Driver and Snidely Whiplash? If Austin Powers and Shrek found themselves in a hot dog eating contest, who would emerge victorious? These are the questions we talk about on Nerd Killer Warfare. Debate the most absurd questions you've ever heard in popular culture. Register now by scanning the QR code or visiting bit.ly/EXP casting.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey. And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Go follow the experience on TikTok at @the_EXP1 or scan the QR code on the screen. Our TikTok is like everywhere else we are, except you only have to deal with us for a minute. Seems like a win-win to me.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Before we get into talking about Ahsoka Tano, I want to plug something real quick. I mentioned this a few weeks ago when it first came out. Dan Taylor is a good buddy of mine. He's the co-creator of Hero Happy Hour, the book that both Marvel and DC decided to sue when it was called Superhero Happy Hour. He was my former editor at IDW when I was doing 30 Days a Night books and a few other projects there. And he's a good guy. He was my co-host when I first started Pop Go the Writers, my first podcast. So Dan's a good guy. He's re-teaming with Chris Faison, who did Hero Happy Hour with him, for a book called Star Marshals. And that is currently crowdfunding. And they've got about 9 hours left. And Dan writes some very funny books. And Chris is a great artist. So it's going to be a good book. And they're currently $86 away from making their goal. So they have 9 hours to make $86. There's a lot of options on it. You can pick up a digital book for as low as $5. You can get the standard, the actual print one for $10. Take a moment, if you would, and check it out and see. This may be a book that you'd be interested in, and if so, do me a favor, back these guys. Like I said, there's a variant cover option, stuff like that. But yeah, check it out if you can. I would appreciate it. Like I said, Dan's a good guy. So, and he puts out good books. Just saying. We can all use good comics, right? All right. Let's talk about Ahsoka Tano. I guess the series is just called Ahsoka. But, the reviews on this have been pretty good so far. I've heard a few negative things. JD, we talked a little bit before the show, and he is not necessarily a fan of Dave Filoni. And I can see that. Dave Filoni has his thing, and a lot of Clone Wars and Rebels, a lot of that stuff is being brought into the current era, the Jon Favreau, the Favreau-Filoni era of Star Wars. He's working in Ahsoka, he's worked in Cad Bane, and just a lot of characters that were introduced in Rebels and in the Clone Wars are getting worked in here. We had Zeb, one of the rebels, show up in the end of in the third season of The Mandalorian. We get Hera Syndulla. We get Sabine Wren. We know that Grand Admiral Thrawn is coming. We know that Ezra is part of the season. We get Chopper in the new series. So I was kind of curious about how this series would hit if you weren't a fan, or not if you weren't a fan, but if you hadn't watched Clone Wars or Rebels. And JD made a comment about that too. And I was thinking that they really don't spend much time establishing the already set up backstory, the connection between Sabine and Ezra, and why it matters to her that he has to go after her, why he's gone, just how dangerous Grand Admiral Thrawn is. A lot of the stuff that I know because I've watched a couple episodes of Rebels, a couple episodes of Clone Wars, but when somebody comes up in the show, I do a little research and I dig into it. So I know that there's a lot of important stuff there. So I thought maybe this isn't a series for somebody who doesn't have the backstory, doesn't have the knowledge in the existing stuff and lore. And then I talked to Jim Beard, and Jim is my co-host for the current co-host for Pop Go the Writers. And Jim has never watched Clone Wars. And Jim has never watched Rebels. And he said that he's watched both of the first two episodes twice. And that he's following along fine. He doesn't feel like he's missing anything. He's enjoying the series. He likes it a lot. And then I realized that maybe the actual answer there is that you don't know what you don't know. Because they haven't explained the dangers of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Well, if you just watch, The Mandalorian and now this, well, you know that Thrawn's name got thrown about a couple times, and that the group of bad guys we meet in season 3 of The Mandalorian, that Moff Gideon's part of, are waiting for Thrawn to come back. You know that he's the last Grand Admiral, according to Sim said. So, okay, Thrawn is important. Do you need to know that he's a Chiss? Do you need to know that he's probably the best tactical mind in the galaxy? No, I'm sure they'll get to that. So, but I'm bugged because I know this and it's not being told to the viewers. So I'm thinking that, well, you're not giving enough information. You're not explaining that Ezra Bridger was a Jedi in training and he had a bond with Sabine. No, they showed a holodisc and said, "You're like a sister to me." It's like, okay, so we know that. I think the thing is that we know, if you know. Thank you, Clayton. I appreciate that. We know enough, or I know enough to know what's not being told. And to me, I think it's important, but maybe it's not. Maybe they're giving just enough for a new viewer, and then they'll get to the rest of it when they get to it. The last thing you want to have is a giant information dump. We already got a crawl at the front of this, and they haven't done a good Star Wars crawl in a while. And it was weird too, because instead of yellow going back and disappearing in the distance, it was just red and went straight up. But there's a lot to take away from this series so far. The first thing has to be, we're going to start with the bad guys on this. And there's probably going to be some spoilers. So yeah, Jay, or JD, if you're there, can you do the spoiler thing? All right. We've got 4 basic villains. We have my favorite, and that's Baylan Skoll. Baylan is played by Ray Stevenson, who just passed away a couple months back. Love Ray Stevenson in everything when he was the Punisher, in Warzone, Volstagg in the Thor films, Titus Polo in Rome. Ray Stevenson is a guy And there's a handful of actors in this world that I think when you put them in a movie, they automatically make it better. Ray Stevenson is one of them. Clancy Brown is another one, and he shows up in this it's just kind of a funny thing to have him pop up. But so Ray Stevens Balin Skrull is a former Jedi, but we don't really know what he is now, other than he's a mercenary who craves power. He has a apprentice. I don't want to call her a Padawan because I don't know if he's using that term. And it's Shin Hati, played by Ivana Sakno. And the interesting thing is Dave Filoni is obsessed with wolves. His character name in Star Wars universe is Trapper Wolf when he plays an X-Wing pilot. There's artwork in there that has the whole team from Rebels surrounded by two wolves. Wolf symbolism pops up a lot. Well, there are two wolves in Norse mythology that are known for chasing after the sun. It's part of one of the myths. And their names Skrull and Hati. So, or is it Shin? Skrull and Shin. So the two bad guys have the name of the two wolves from the Norse mythology. But so we have those two. Oh, nice, Lieutenant. Thank you. Glad to see that. So those are two of our bad guys. We also get, was it Morgan Lisbeth? That how was the name? Yeah, Morgan Elsbeth. And she's kind of interesting because she's played by Diana Lee Inosanto, who is Bruce Lee's granddaughter. She showed up in the second season of The Mandalorian in the Ahsoka episode, where we first hear the name Grand Admiral Thrawn. So it's cool to have her back, but we find out that she is more than just a bureaucrat. We find out that she is one of the Night Sisters of Dathomir. And this is another Clone War creation. This is a group of witches that use spells. And I don't know if they're actually tapping into the Force to do it, but they're pretty interesting characters. And Darth Maul's mother was one of the Night Sisters. So they're known as witches, like I said. So that's already an interesting addition. In canon, they're tapping into the dark side. Okay. So that makes sense. Yeah. Well, there's a fourth villain that we know so little about, named Marek. And Marek is a Force user, and he looks like he's either like he was an Inquisitor, possibly the eighth brother, who gets killed. So he might be the replacement for the eighth brother. He might be the eighth brother who turned out to have lived, but he's got the two-ended circular lightsaber thing going. So there's four villains there. So you've got an ex-Jedi who's now a mercenary, his apprentice, a Night Sister of Dathomir, and somebody who looks like they used to be an Inquisitor. That's a pretty formidable team of villains. And they're trying to find a map that will take them to where Grand Admiral Thrawn is. And we find out that this is actually in another galaxy. Now, that's one of the things that people are kind of freaking out about on the series, is that it's kind of canon for a long time that there was only one galaxy in Star Wars, that it was all just part of this. So I don't know too much about that. That's lore I've never explored, but I see that's one of the things that people are bothered by. and this is actually a path to another galaxy. But it kind of makes sense that if you had watched Rebels, you know that Ezra used his ability to communicate with animals to get the Purgles, which are the giant space whales, to take him and Admiral Thrawn far away. And it seems like what it is are the Purgles have two locations where they live, breeding grounds or whatever, and they can teleport back and forth between the two to the two different galaxies. So that would suddenly make sense why they would have a map if they knew the two locations that the Purgles would go to, and then they knew that Thrawn was taken by Purgles, they would know where he went. That's the only thing that makes sense. Because if they just went someplace randomly, then the map wouldn't make any sense. So you got all that going on the bad guy's side. On the good guy's side, we get the rebel characters returning. We get Hera Syndulla, who's a general. She's with Chopper. We don't see Jason, her son. Her and Kanan Jarrus' son. Kanan, of course, Kanan, who died in the Rebel series. Sabine supposedly was training with Ahsoka, but is no longer. Ahsoka left her, so there's a lot of resentment there. And part of this series is going to be them patching it up. I can see that already. And along with Ahsoka is a robot or a droid named Huyang, who is played by David Tennant, or voiced by David Tennant. So in this episode, we've got Ray Stevenson, David Tennant, and Clancy Brown. So I'm already loving this episode. But one of the things I really liked they did in this is they talk about, one of the things that they're establishing is that when the Empire takes over, or when the Empire falls and the rebellion takes over and starts the new, whatever they're calling themselves, there's no real formation. They're using a lot of the same people. They're not ready to take over. They're not ready to lead. And that's why it's so easy for them to, the Empire to regrow, is because so many of the people they're using to do the jobs were the same ones the Empire were using. And we see that in this base on Corellia that are supposed to be stripping down old Imperial fleets and putting together new ships and stuff. And the guy running it is played by Peter Jacobson, I believe it is. He plays Min Weaver. And Min is very straightforward. He's like, yeah, no, I used to be with the Empire. A lot of the people here used to be with the Empire, but we're here about making money. So that's all that matters to us. We're about making money, and we're filling orders and stuff. And when they start asking questions they're not supposed to be asking, they get attacked. And of course, they fight it off, but it's obvious that the new government is not really doing a good job, and that the Empire is still doing a lot of their stuff. They're just doing it quietly in the shadows. So when you see something like the First Order rising later on in The Last Jedi and stuff like that, it makes a lot more sense because the Alliance never really took hold. They didn't really get rid of the rest of the Empire. They just kind of said, you're not Empire anymore. Just do what you keep doing what you're doing. So when the Empire came back, they went, oh, we're Empire again. Nice. So, yeah, hey, Kenneth. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in this first episode. And we'll talk a little bit more, but we need to take another quick break. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll finish some thoughts on Ahsoka. So be right back.
Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code. According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into The Experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone just by tuning into The Experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Remember, we've got What's in the Box tonight, we've got SketchUp, and we've got our soft debut of the comic book Beardies at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So check those out. All right, let me give you my final thoughts on Ahsoka. I'm kind of mixed on it. Like I said, it feels like we're not getting enough information. But that's probably because I know more than most people. But I don't have like an encyclopedic knowledge of Rebels and Clone Wars. I know just enough to know what we are and what we aren't getting. So, you know, maybe Jim's right. Jim's doesn't have those kind of what information I have, and he's going with it fine. So that could be perfectly right. At the moment, I find the villains more interesting than the heroes. I find myself enjoying the droids better than the humans, or the Chopper is hilarious, and so the one laugh out loud moment I had was Huyang pointing out that when it said that something might blow up, and Hera says, "Go ahead, keep going." His response was, "Oh, that's easy for you to say. You're a hologram," because she was a hologram at the time. I liked the character of Ahsoka in The Mandalorian. I didn't really like her in Clone Wars, of episodes I did see of her. She was very annoying, but she was very young at the time. She didn't do much for me here. She came across very aloof and determined, and while that is good for a story, it's hard to kind of endear yourself to a character. Sabine was more interesting. Hera was more interesting than Ahsoka, who's the title character. But I found myself wanting more screen time from Balin, because he's the most interesting character so far, and which kind of breaks my heart knowing that Ray Stevenson has passed away. They ended the first episode with a little tribute screen saying, "For our friend Ray," and I think it's really sad because I think a lot of people are going to like this character and like how he's portraying him, and it really was going to get him a lot of good attention. There's a couple things that happen in it. One specific thing, spoilers are still up. So Sabine gets injured, and she does so in a way almost identical to that of Qui-Gon Jinn. And the difference is that Qui-Gon Jinn died and Sabine lives. And there really isn't even a recognition of that. There isn't a, you're lucky that technology has come along that we could save you from a wound like that. It used to be fatal or something. Some moment to acknowledge the difference. Because that's been a pet peeve of a lot of fans, how easily Qui-Gon Jinn died. You know, it's like, oh, well, if a lightsaber to the gut, run through your gut is an instant death, then that's what it is. We're now set that bar, and then we see it with Sabine, and she's fine the next episode. Just feels like there needed to be a moment's acknowledgement of that. There's a lot of Easter eggs and stuff for fans, and it doesn't quite feel like there's so many that you're missing out if you don't know this stuff. It's like, oh, these ships are E-Wings, and they're from this book. That's stuff you can all pick up online, watch the Easter egg videos, but it doesn't change the story. It's just like you don't need to translate the Arabish on Sabine's helmet or on the passing road signs, or you don't even need to recognize that when they visit Corellia, that's where Han Solo's from, and that we see the same place in Solo, a Star Wars story, and it looks similar. That's the one thing it does well, is that it puts those Easter eggs in there for the hardcore fans, but don't make them so important or so obvious that the more casual fans feel like they're being left out. So I think that does that well. I think they're going to need to go more into the backstory of Ezra and Thrawn and what happened, but they haven't yet. So I reserve judgment on that to see how they play it out going forward. It just feels like there was a lot of good fighting in the first two episodes. It's not slow to action. I've seen a lot of shows like that where it's like, well, we took an entire episode and a half to get to an actual fight scene. We get battles pretty regularly. So from that point of view, it does feel like Star Wars to me. I loved Andor, but it never felt like Star Wars. The Mandalorian felt like Star Wars to me. Obi-Wan somewhat did. This feels like Star Wars to me. So I like that. This basic story so far, again, I kind of want to see how it's going to play out. I'm not even sure how many episodes this is supposed to be. Let me see. Oh, it's going to be an 8-episode series. Okay. So we got 2, and then we're going to get 1 each Tuesday for the next 6 weeks. All right, that's pretty good. So we'll continue talking about it here on the show. But yeah, I think it's a good start. I need to get past the sadness about Ray Stevenson. I hope that we get a little more. The last time we saw Ahsoka was in the episode where Mando went to go visit Grogu when he was training with Luke. And there was some lightness. There was some humor. We didn't get that in this. And I realize that she's intense. But I'm hoping that now that she's teamed back up with Sabine, things will settle down a bit and we'll get a little more personality out of Ahsoka. Because right now it's just this one note. So Sabine's pretty interesting. From what I remember of the Rebel series I did see, it seems like they're nailing the character. And there's even a moment of where they take the anime part of the animated finale and bring it to life. And I thought that was well done. If you're wondering about Clancy Brown, he voiced the character in the animated series that he ends up playing, Governor Ryder Azadi. And then there's another character as well that they bring from Rebels. So there is a lot of Rebel tie-ins and stuff. And if you get a chance to go back and watch Rebels, this series would probably open up on a whole new level for you. You don't have to. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely check out the series. And we will keep talking about it each week. Other than that, let me just double check Star Marshals. Yep, still $10, but they're damn close and 9 hours to go. So, all right, guys, remember, stick around. We've got What's in the Box, the comic book beardies, and Sketch Up tonight. So stick around for all that, and I will see you all next week. Have a good weekend.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.